And with lately, probably Ruby 2.0 and Rails 4.0, and trying to break into Ember and Ember data and tie all of that stuff together. So
Kevin totally went to an Ember camp. You should.
I want to pick Doug's brain about the Arduino stuff because I find that fascinating, and now I know Kevin went to Ember camp, and I want to pick his brain about that. Anything else, or shall we?
Did we miss anybody?
Kevin, Super Chris, and more Chris snuck out.
Thank you, Gaslight, for the pizza.
Yes.
St. Dewey's, they actually stepped in and like engaged and used social media. It was impressive. That's pretty cool.
Cool. Is this thing on? That probably would have been.
Probably helped, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's my bad. I should have had it on. This presentation's boring.
God! Get that guy off the. Get him down. He's terrible. Got a little remix going in there. Speakers. So I tend to ramble sometimes when I get on a roll, so you guys have to just tell me to shut up if I'm get on something and just keep going.
Start rambling about something.
It's on. It's just a secondary monitor or something. Oh, is it? Why are we doing that?
Spaces for the win.
Yeah. Oh, hey, looky.
My favorite. By the way, does everybody know the Wi-Fi password, Doug? What is it? I'm sorry.
So, this guy is pretty much obsolete since I already introduced myself. So, you can find me on the web anywhere you want to, and probably some places you don't, at janders223. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about some DevOps, more specifically setting up servers, and even more specifically about a gem to help us spin up EC2 instances. And I have to be honest, that part of my job is probably my least favorite, so hence Hulk smashing, all of that. I honestly think the reason that I dislike it so much is because Heroku has made me soft. Heroku create, add-ons add, git push, and I'm done. My instance is running, and it's made me soft. And I remembered back, I actually found my old, it wasn't necessarily a script, but I had a set of notes that was, you know, install these updates, install Postgres with this command, install this with this command. And it's kind of truncated here, but it looks kind of something like that. And it was painful. I mean, it was pretty much an all-day event. Install whatever OS I was going to run, install all of my updates, database, Redis, whatnot. So finding Heroku was great, but the limitations of not being able to write to the file system often hampered us with things that we need. We do a lot of file uploads, a lot of what's that one acronym for uploading files and displaying it? CMS, Content Management System. So we do a lot of that, so I need to be able to upload those files. S3 isn't always an option for us. So in those cases, we turned back to EC2, which was nice. My OS was already installed, but then I had to still go through all of this stuff. So I found a lovely little gem called Rubber. And as it states in the little block quote there, Rubber plugin, actually it should say gem, enables relatively complex multi-instance deployments of Ruby on Rails applications. So it allows us to spin up web servers, app servers, master and slave database servers with just a few simple commands, making it much more Heroku-like, just a little bit more length of time as we're waiting for those instances to spin up. Some of the main features of Rubber: deployment lives in your application as a first-class citizen. The files are right there in your config directory. They're checked into, words are failing me. Source control, sorry. So they're right there. The only complaint that I have with that is you do have to copy like your account number for Amazon and things like that in there. So there's probably some workarounds that we can use. It's extremely flexible. So it has what it considers a sane set of defaults. So it's going to run right out of the box with just a couple of commands. But you can go into all of your deploy scripts and config scripts and change whatever you need to change. And it makes scaling a breeze.
So does it use Capistrano, but just
Yes.
basically APIs for Amazon EC2s and then configuration files and sort of class set modules that...
Right. It's basically built on top of Capistrano and then uses rake tasks to run bash commands and things that you need. Scaling is as simple as, cap rubber create, and then I want to create a new web server, I want to create a new app server, or I need to scale up, and add another database server. And all of those things, scaling up, scaling down is just a simple command. Getting started, it's pretty easy and simple to use. First, obviously, we need to install the gem, and then Spot comes in with the vulcanize command. So rubber, vulcanize, and then whatever template you want to use. And in this case, complete unicorn Nginx Postgres. And then all of those templates, where's my mouse? Are listed in the repository. So we've got Apache, Cassandra, CollectD, Couchbase, HA proxy, MySQL, MongoDB, pretty much anything you want. And if you look at a few of these, like for instance, the only thing that complete unicorn Nginx Postgres is a YAML file that tells it its dependent templates are complete unicorn Nginx, and let's throw in Postgres.
So these come with the rubber gem?
Yes, they come with the rubber gem, and when you run the vulcanize command.
Can you click on complete unicorn Nginx one? So
Yep. Complete unicorn Nginx. So then that tells you it has dependent templates. Whoops, sorry. Dependent templates of base, which does your HA proxy, CollectD, Monet, and things like that. And then it throws in Nginx, unicorn. Whoops, Monet's in there. And then if you go back inside of the config for each template, it sets up role dependencies. So if you set up the app server, okay, Unicorn's going there, Web Tools, Nginx going to run that.
Effectively, it parses these, evaluates them, and then executes the rake tasks under Capistrano by what these are, and sets up all the instance variables.
Correct. So if we go back, I will show you. Let's see here. Go back. So it basically, once we run the vulcanize command, under our config directory in the rubber, we get all the Ruby files that have the specific rake tasks that are run, and then all of the YAML files for the templates. And I have a project here that is already set up. Yes, I know I'm in the wrong place to be using text editor. But for instance, if we look at our rubber.yaml file. So we give it an app name, whatever we want to call it, the user that it'll create on our server, an admin email for the web tools if we install them, and then the domain that we want to use. And then down below, we can actually choose from a few different providers. We can choose AWS, select our region, set up our access keys and account numbers. We have to give it our AWS key pair. Excuse me, sorry. We can set our instance type. So like Amazon for your first year will give you a micro instance for free, which is nice for testing. And then we can also specify which AMI instance we want to use, which is really nice if you have a specific one that you like. You could also use Rackspace if you wanted to. I haven't explored using the rubber gem with Rackspace. And then all your very specific configs down at the bottom. You can set up your security groups the way you want. What else is in here? Packages that need to be installed. So it's going to install Git, build essentials. Don't think there's anything else that really has to be overridden in here. That's pretty much it. Adding templates, excuse me, is pretty simple. For instance, this app required Sidekick. So I added that as our background worker and told it to use Sidekick. Do you have that talk ready?
But just curious how that's been working out for you.
Pretty decent. As like I said, all those files we're uploading, it uploads a zip file with maybe 100 files and folders and stuff in between it. So parsing that out at the application level, unzipping it, and then moving it to the directory we want using Sidekick works really well.
What version of Ruby are you using on your server? Are you using MRI or?
Yeah, MRI. It's not that intensive that I really needed to go to JRuby yet, but and then that deploy template basically sets up the different tasks that allow the deploys and the setups to start, stop, and restart Sidekick.
How much of this is Amazon specific? It looks like it's mostly just server stuff, right?
It does, or I'm sorry, it is mostly just server-specific stuff. It basically touts that it will work with any fog provider. So Rackspace, AWS, I haven't seen it used anywhere outside of AWS. We haven't used it outside of anywhere other than AWS. Yes, sir. I'm sorry? There we go. Sorry. So like I said, basically the tasks are just running the bash commands to set everything up. And then, yep. And then I tried this afternoon to reset this instance up to show you guys what it looked like when it was finished. And it unfortunately failed. It didn't want to install libv8 on the server. But basically with caprubber create staging, it runs through and says all of your roles that you want to install, I'm going to install on one server. That way it's there and you don't have to worry about having 3 or 4 instances running. And it asks you for a host name because it sets up a an alias in your host file. So I could just do, in this case, apple.topgunhq.com, and it would automatically take me to that instance. Asks me the roles I want to use, enter for default. It runs through, it sets up the security groups in AWS And since I had already created them, it's like, hey, this one already exists. And where's my mouse? It runs through, sets up the instance, and waits for it to start. And it actually runs through and fails a couple of times and then connects. And then it goes through, sets up the roles, and then you can just watch it complete different commands as it sets up. And then it runs through and does all of the updates. And the really fun stuff happens after that, eventually. Reconnects after a reboot. More updates. Sorry. Here we go. So then setting up Nginx, Redis, pretty much straightforward, but at this point you're just sitting and watching and not having to do anything. This generally takes about 30 to 45 minutes to run as it runs through everything. And as usual, the longest part is installing Ruby. The only downside, I think, is that it uses RVM to manage Rubies. I know, I'm not overly fond, but November, Victor, right? Yeah. But it does that, or it uses RVM. See, now you got me all messed up. And in this case, it's, what, patch level 194 of 193 MRI. And I believe in,
Today?
I'm sorry?
Did you install it today?
I did this today. You can specify in one of those config files, I forget which one, what actual version of Ruby you want.
I bet you could not use RVM too if you wanted to, right?
Probably. I haven't had a chance to dig that deep into it. I'm sure you could probably install directly from source.
It looks like it compiled Redis from source. So.
Yeah. So then it installs all your gems that it needs. Whoops. And then as you can see, could not find libv8 in any of the sources. And that was at about 445 or so. Oh no, I'm sorry. That was at 352. And then it doesn't know cap deploy because it's, no, it's not, oh, it's cap rubber bootstrap, which will redeploy your code. And I didn't take the time to install from GitHub. I just ran it locally. And there's a whole host of, there it is, sorry. There's a whole host of commands that are available. See if I can get them all up there. Almost. So Bootstrap, Bootstrap instances, setting everything up, installing packages and gems. Create runs you through a different set of create commands. It's going to ask you what specific role you want, what specific name you want. So in the case of, you know, a high-level deployment, this is Web01, this is App01, this is DB01, and you can set them up with those specific roles. Destroy, pretty straightforward. You can describe the security groups, and then there's different ones to restart different services, you know, for HA proxy, Monits down there, MySQL. You can tail the logs, all of that good stuff. This was actually much shorter than I thought it was going to be.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You know, I think EC2 allows you to have snapshots, or basically images that you can deploy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ideas would be you want to scale up or you want to throw out something. So you would use Rubber to basically deploy your your baseline snapshot or your baseline like app stack, and then does this? I don't see it in these rate commands. You may have read about it, and that's the question I had. Is once I've deployed all this stuff, it'd be nice for me to be able to using the EC2 tools to be able to say like snapshot that, stash it away, modify some things. Can you do that yet?
I haven't seen a way within Rubber itself to actually do that. One thing I've noticed is it doesn't seem like anybody's actively maintaining it.
Yeah, I saw one thing was like 3 days ago. Oh, that was 3 years ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was a bump to 221 7 days ago.
That's what it was.
But, like, for instance, the Sidekick task was 4 months ago. And as far as I know, it's still not in the published gem. So I had to, fork and build the gem locally and install it.
Because there's another question that I have related to the way like Chef works, because a lot of hosting companies and Amazon and I'm pretty sure Engineard and other people use Chef. You know how Chef works?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's sort of similar but different. This is a very nice like overlay of Capistrano tasks designed for a specific targeted environment like the EC2.
Right.
And I think you were saying somebody was kind of maybe doing something for, what did you say? There was one other thing. Maybe it was Heroku or something, I think. You said that...
Rackspace.
Oh, yeah,
Rackspace, yeah.
So, yeah, I guess the question is this scalable in that context, Because what ends up happening is what you see, like the deploys fail, some library is not available, right? And now you're maintaining, is it because the link or the reference is bad in the source here, or is it because like the repo
Well,
doesn't exist?
that was actually during the bundle install in the Rails app itself. So everything was deployed, and it was running the bundle install and couldn't find
That's
it.
interesting.
So that was,
It looked like it was only looking in vendor cache and not trying to install it from Ruby gems or
right.
because you wouldn't bundle V8, right? 'Cause it's native application.
Right. So I'm not really sure. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of time to play with that, to figure out what was going on with not being able to bundle. So
There's something weird about the way V8 has to be built with the native extensions on Ubuntu.
Yeah.
And I've run into it twice in the past, and every time it's one of those things like you look it up, you figure out what the fix is, you fix it, and then you forget until the next time it breaks, which is 6 or 8 months later.
the last time I deployed this, it was, the last time I deployed this, it was a good 16 hours, getting all my configurations just right, and then, and I looked it up and fixed it, and it's been, 3 months since I've done that, and
In all fairness, I've had the same problem with Chef too. Is whatever cookbook or recipe doesn't quite compile under whatever you're building, and then you spend hours debugging that. They work great when they just work, but automated tools are only as good as the time that's spent on them.
yeah, that's really the only complaint is that because it's an Ubuntu server, I have to have libv8, I have to have the Ruby Racer or something else. And, HA proxy and Nginx don't always play nice together. So trying to remember that before I deploy the first time and then going back and terminate an instance. Those are the really only complaints I have, and the fact that it doesn't seem to be maintained as well as I would like are really the only complaints. And that's about it, guys.
So have you looked at any Puppet or Chef or any of those for comparison purposes? Or?
I've played around with Chef a little bit. 90% of our apps are on Heroku. So my need for this is minimal right now, but I do have Vagrant installed, I do have Chef, and I've played around with it some, but not as extensively as I've needed to.
And so I guess what was your thinking that led you to sort of go this route? Was it a simplicity thing over one of the more DevOps kind of packages?
It was a simplicity thing. I'm a single developer, so trying to maintain 8, 9, 10 apps, and these 7 are on Heroku, and these two are on EC2, it really was just simplicity. Anything else?
I'm not too familiar with cloud technologies because I don't really do that much of it. Is there a way to run Chef on EC2 and on Rackspace and Heroku?
Right, you just, as far as I know, like I said, I've not played with it enough, but you just install it and you build up your recipes and run your recipes on the server, right?
Yeah, they generally have a client piece that gets installed on the servers that sort of communicates with the main server. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I've got more experience with Puppet, but in essence, what we do is we set up a what we call a master instance, and that sort of is the holder of all the configurations, and you push to instances from that. I think there are ways that it can be set up to pull as well, so you can make configuration changes and it pulls for those configuration changes. But I mean, it is sort of it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, right? So you would have to have either a pre-built AMI or something like that, or some way to spin up an instance and then get the client install agent on there, yeah. But I mean, I think that in the EC2 world, that would be having an image that you've sort of pre-built that has that. Once you've got that image pre-built in theory, then it can become whatever kind of server you want it to become, because it can update to all the versions of all the packages that you need to do that all automatically.
And Heroku lets you do that too?
No.
Heroku doesn't give you that much. So, I mean,
With Heroku, you ideally shouldn't need that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Heroku is just the
each
app
one of
and the
them
add-on.
And to your point, or not really to your point, but to add on, I mean, the reason that I started looking into something like Rubber was looking through AMIs and like, oh, this one says it's a Ruby on Rails ready, and oh, you're running like 3.03 and Ruby 187? No, thank you. And there just really wasn't anything else, so.
The AMI management of the EC2 is one of the sort of odder parts, because in essence, anytime you updated a server, you'd have to take a snapshot of it to get sort of, here's my baseline again, unless you had everything automated to update in some other way. So, I mean, yeah, you would, I think it's like, AMIs like that you get off the shelf are kind of like scaffolding in Rails, right? They're kind of awesome for like getting to know how to use it, but then once you really want to use it in Anchor, you know you're going to make your own.
Yeah. And with our limited use of EC2, it's easier for us to use something like this.
So, can I ask you a question that's not to be taken in a critical way, because I don't know the answer? Do you feel, now that you've gone through this, that the time you spent getting Rubber configured and doing all of this, that it was better time spent doing that versus spending your time figuring out how you could have done all this and solved your problem and continued to just use Heroku?
it's also versus money, right? So
True.
Right, yeah, I don't know all of
solve
the...
it for Heroku, but it's like $20,000.
Sure.
I mean,
I don't know all the factors.
I mean, we would have been paying for, you know, a couple of web dynos and 2 or 3 worker dynos and S3 storage. So at that point, you know, what's a large instance with, I forget the add-on that gives you blocks of storage. You know, we weighed the cost of that, and it was probably in the end cheaper to go this way for us.
I could probably believe that.
Yep.
So break-even point of not doing it just manually is probably 5 or 10 servers or something?
I don't know. I didn't crunch the numbers. I mean, that's not, it's like, here, I think this is what we're going to need. You guys figure this out. I'm glad I don't have to worry about that. There are people with a higher pay grade.
I think your question was when to automate.
Well, yeah, when do you use a tool at all instead of just doing it? Google how to install Ubuntu with whatever.
So with one of the things that people might not know about EC2 is that if you shut an instance off, it is gone. Anything changed on it that you haven't snapshotted, other than the elastic block storage that you could have
I
mapped
think they
directly?
changed that.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure that you can stop an instance now.
Are you going to stop on your production instance?
Let's test this.
No, I'm not going to do that, but
Look at that marketing right on the front page. They do it for you. They just stamp out stuff.
fortunately this is a separate account, so it only has this one instance that I tried to spin up this afternoon. Oh, no, you're right. I think you have to add on for the termination protection that allows you to stop it without poof.
So without that, yeah, you stop it and you just lose.
It goes back to whatever its initial state was when you started it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting, I mean, but it's a totally different architecture from, having hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also lends itself to the idea, sort of, that was a long explanation for it, lends itself to the idea of, automated after the first time, because if you ever, if the power ever goes out, I know that's unlikely, but like whatever, if it ever
It's not
stops.
that unlikely,
Yeah,
historically.
for any reason whatsoever, it's toast, right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing. We also have our original Rails application running on physical hardware in our building. And the night of the last Ruby Brigade, at about 4:45, it went poof. One of the storage disks failed miserably. And so, I spent the whole rest of the evening taking the server that we had planned on, waiting a few weeks to upgrade, and upgrading it, and going through all of this pain manually because we didn't have Chef or Puppet or anything ready for that. Whereas if it were in something like Rubber, it would have just been hit enter and wait.
Wait for errors.
Wait for errors. Yeah, wait for
But hey,
errors.
that's better than manually doing everything. Even that is better than manually doing everything.
There's a
right?
lot less sweat involved.
Yeah,
when you're
exactly.
waiting for errors.
And that was our IT guy saying, here's this server, I have Ubuntu 12.04 server installed. And I broke out the handy little notepad file I had that said, okay, install this, run this, and that was my night that night.
Nice.
Yeah. There's plenty of beer in the office, so it was okay.
Unlike here.
Oh.
Kind of.
So someone mentioned Chef earlier and having a master Chef server that has this. I just wanted to point out also that like Opscode offers hosted Chef as well, so they'll actually host your Chef server that holds all your configs.
Kind of related to this, I noticed, I'm not sure if they posted it today or just in the last couple of days, but GitHub has a post on their blog
Yeah.
about, what do they call it? It's
Boxing.
Boxin,
Yep.
which is kind of like the same idea, but for your MacBook. So that,
Yeah.
a new developer comes on board, you give them their MacBook,
It actually
and
uses Puppet.
does it use
Under
Puppet?
the covers, yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
So that's really interesting to me because I actually tried to use Chef to configure my MacBook Air, and I had this grand dream of being able to automate, configs for Gaslight, just like here's a developer workstation, here you go. And I tried using Pivotal's workstation recipes and a few others, and nothing really worked as advertised or very well because there's all kinds of issues when you go to Mountain Lion with GCC and latest Xcode. But supposedly things work in Boxing. I haven't got to try it out yet, so please do investigate. Anybody who does that, I would love to, I don't know, for them to talk at the next CincyRB about it. Pretty cool.
Cool.
All right. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you.